All right, welcome to another episode of Poncha Talk. My name is Ellie. I'm host of Poncha Talk, and in this podcast, we talk about all things related to remote work, digital nomad lifestyle to inspire you to live a more flexible life yourself. And today, we're going to talk about a very important topic that nobody really wants to talk about, though, namely taxes. More specifically, taxes as a location independent digital nomad. And since I am in no way a tax expert, I invited Marchela from the Wealthy Nomad today to join us. She will be dialing in from Asia today. But she's a tax expert and also a digital nomad and location independent business owner herself. So she will share her story with us and her knowledge of the topic. Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time today to join the Poncha Talk on this, very important topic that you cover for taxes, specifically taxes for location-independent digital nomads. But before we dive too much into that topic, let's hear a little bit about your story first, because you're also a digital nomad yourself, right? How did you get started with it?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I'm super excited to dive into taxes, but of course, yeah, very, very happy to share my story. And so I basically been a nomad for about 4 years now. So I come from a very, I guess, very similar background in a sense that I was part of the 9 to 5 workforce for a long time. I lived in the UK, in London actually, for the majority of my kind of professional career. So I spent about 8 years living in London and working for one of the big four accountancy firms out there, specializing in taxes. So very much what I do, very similar to what I do now. In terms of taxes, but I was in a very traditional sort of 9 to 5 job, Monday to Friday, 20 odd holiday days every single year. Very very typical. And I started working when I was 16, and so 15 and a half, almost 16, because I remember my parents had to give permission for me to work. And so about 4 years ago, a bit, actually maybe 5 years ago, I had realized actually that I had never stopped working, like since I first
Mhm.
got my first job. And I was like, you know what? This is absolutely crazy. I feel like I'm just spending so much of my life just working and or studying. So I because when I left high school, I went to study in Scotland, and I couldn't afford it. I'm Bulgarian, and at the time my parents were had no means to support me. So as soon as I went to the UK to Scotland, I had to pick up a job, and so it was constantly me studying or working. And so 5 years ago, I decided, okay, I've got this really secure job at PwC at the time. People love me. I love what I do. I'm in a position where I can ask for a bit of time off. Like it felt so weird even asking for it because I had never taken longer than even 2 weeks off. I don't remember taking um off everything. And so when I went to my partner at the time and asked to just ask for a 3 month sabbatical to go and travel, that was my whole thing. The first reason I went to Scotland in the first place was to get out of Bulgaria and just build those means to actually be able to travel a little bit more.
Mhm.
And so 5 years ago, when I went to my partner and asking for that 3 month sabbatical, at first they were like, "What is going on? Like you're right at the height of your career. Like you're doing so amazing. Like why are you wanting to slow down a little bit here?" And I explained obviously the personal need to go and see the world a little bit. And
Mhm.
so, long story short, they granted me the permission to go for 3 months away from London, away from the office, from work, and to just go and do my thing. And so straight away I packed the bag and I went to Southeast Asia. And so I traveled for 3 months all by myself, no phones checking, nothing to do with work, just truly enjoying my life and just seeing what is out there that I so badly wanted to go and see. And I had the most amazing time of my life. I mean, I sure have done a lot before that in terms of, going to a different country, like moving from Bulgaria to somewhere else at 17, 18. At the
Mhm.
time, like I had still some life experience that was different from kind of the traditional life. But I just, like what I experienced in 3 months, just in pure life, you can't go back to being a traditional 9 to 5er afterwards, or at
Mhm.
least I couldn't. And so when I went back to London, I realized that very little had actually changed in the sense that all my projects were still there, kind of waiting for me to come back. all my colleagues were there working on the same projects because I mean, as a big company, things were obviously moving slowly
Mhm.
or like slower than now, for example. And so when I went back, I told all my stories of how I went to Indonesia, how I snorkeled in the Philippines, how I saw elephants in Thailand. People were like, "What is going on here? Like this is like a lifetime of stories." And when I went back, I just could not sustain the 9 to 5. And so that's when it all triggered for me. I realized that I need to make a change because it quickly sweeps
Mhm.
you back in.
Yes.
Like, you
Mhm.
get busy with work, and I was a high client in the personal private client tax. So, every single client was, big money, high risk, like you get swept in very fast. And so that was the point when I made that decision that I need to make that transition and figure out a way to get out of the traditional life. And so that's what triggered it. It took me a year actually to fully decide. Okay, it took me a year and COVID to make that drastic. You know, off you go. Bye, guys. I love you, but I need to move on. So long story short, it took a few months afterwards to really get out of the UK. Was starting to pay really high taxes there anyway, so I was getting a little bit fed up of that as well. Because the more it worked, the more my money was going away. I'm like, oh my god, when is this gonna stop? And so yeah, it took some time, but oh my god, I've never looked back. And when you make a right
Mhm.
decision years after, you realize that it would have been so much better if I had done it earlier because life's just gone so much
Right.
better.
I can totally relate to that, but it is a big step to leave that comfort of
Mm,
the regular paycheck from behind. But yeah, the
yeah,
reward is really nice. So then once you left,
yeah.
you started your own business, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So I initially started with a different business. Because when I left PwC, I was working with very, very, very high profile clients. I had no idea about digital nomadism. I had
Mhm.
no idea about this massive community that exists now that I quickly became part of. But back then, I did not know that it really existed to that, at least not in that scale for sure. And so when I left, I came from working with people who were literally churning tax bills of millions. And so I couldn't see at the time how me as a single person, doing business is able to attract people who would want my services just
Mhm.
because my whole reference was from all these extremely wealthy people who, as they were coming to PwC because obviously we needed just so much to cover them in terms of services. Like they needed a whole ton of advice because they were just so big in terms of activities and money and wealth and all of that. And so when I first left, I thought, you know what, I love taxes, but I don't see how I can use it from now on as part of my own business. And so I initially started with my partner. We started a business in automation because it was driving me up the wall how many things we were actually doing manually at 3C at the time. And so we created a business that actually automated a lot of the tax tasks that I was doing for
Mhm.
other companies. And so it was still very much tax related. Some projects were tax, and some projects were more wilder finance related. But anyway, it was in the automation space. It still exists. Business is thriving. But as soon as I realized that actually there is community, mainly because people were coming to me because I was traveling a lot, I was meeting a lot of people. And as soon as I was giving my background and telling them that I had this job in London, like doing taxes for people, they're like, oh my god, like I actually have all these tax questions
Yeah.
that I have no idea how to sort of myself. And so that kind of gave me the assurance that there are actually a lot of people out there in my community or my new community who actually could need me. And so
Mhm.
that's how I transitioned from the first business that I did to entirely shift focus and focus again back on taxes. Luckily, it happened actually very fast. So I didn't. I enjoy both businesses because they're so different.
Mhm.
But I love taxes a lot. I mean, I'm one of those weird ones who love numbers. I loved what I do. I'm really good at it as well. And yeah, it was just a very personal fit for me. And so when I realized that there's actually people who need this, I was just
Mhm.
so happy because it just allowed me to go back into my zone of genius, if you will, and just do what I love doing. But now in the context that I actually wanted to do it in, traveling and just having that freedom to be whatever I wanted to be. And also work with people who actually I truly, genuinely love working with and who are very like-minded.
Yeah, I mean, taxes, I think everybody always has questions about taxes. Like here in Madeira, we have all sorts of different digital nomad WhatsApp group chats, but
Oh
the
yeah.
tax group chat is definitely one of the most active ones because everybody always has questions. What were some of the like main questions or common mistakes that you started seeing that made you realize, okay, this is
Mm.
something where I can help people?
Yeah, yeah, very good question. I'd say the first thing that really stood out to me the most was that a lot of people that I was starting to chat to, they had literally just packed their bag and they had gone traveling. So when it came to doing their taxes, they had just done nothing. And so most of the
Mhm.
people that I talk to come from very high tax countries, like Germany, the UK, Belgium, Netherlands, Spain, Italy. And so a lot of them wanted a lifestyle. And so years later, they had realized that actually, you know what, I live this very nomadic lifestyle now. I never go back to Germany, or I very rarely go back to Germany or Belgium, wherever they come from, but they're still paying those stupidly high taxes there. And so the main thing that stood out for me almost immediately was like, you see, there's just this group of so many people who were still paying taxes at home, but they're never at home because they live the lifestyle, yet they're still paying 40, 50, sometimes even more percent of income tax on the money that they're making. And I thought, you know what, this is actually crazy, because if we just sort this out as soon as you decide that this is going to be my life going forward, you're just saving so much money on the in this period where you just do nothing and you just keep things at home because it's easy. You don't want to sort it out. It's taxes. You don't want to deal with it, but it just costs so much money if you don't. And so I think that was the main thing that stood out for me at the beginning. I was like, wow, we're talking about big tax savings here if we tackle
Mhm.
this ASAP. And yeah, I've seen it in all my clients' journey and the work that we've done together. In that, whenever we get to the point where we figure out where we're going to move their tax residency, how we're going to lower their taxes, we always do a calculation of how much they're saving. And so when they realize how much we've managed to save and how much more they would have saved, how they come and talk to me like 3 years ago when they first left, it's mind blowing. It's painful, but it's also mind
Yeah,
blowing. And so definitely 100%, that's the number one thing I do. People just taking too long to sort their taxes.
I get that. I relate to that because it is just a topic that most people don't want to
Yeah.
deal with.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of people just don't think about it too much
Mhm.
until tax season comes. And so they obviously get their tax bill at the end of whatever the year. They look at obviously how horrid it is. They cry for a little bit and then they sort of go back into business and they forget about it. And life obviously goes on. We travel, we spend so much time looking for accommodation that there's just not
Mhm.
that mental capacity to sit down, figure it out, and really optimize for the lifestyle, but also for the taxes. So biggest mistake, that one for sure. I guess the one other thing that I see coming up again and again and again, there's the other extreme. A lot of people kind of go go and live the lifestyle and they stop paying taxes because they believe, I'm no longer in Germany or Belgium or whatever. And so I'm not gonna pay taxes anywhere. And be this tax resident of nowhere, so to speak. And so I often see a lot of people kind of living in that space, which personally me makes me uncomfortable because I
Mhm.
get a lot of people who are coming to me more and more now, actually, with wanting to resolve that situation. Because first of all, massive fear kicks in as to, is this even legal? Like, am I doing things right? Is someone going to come after me and ask questions about the last 5 years that I paid nothing? Broker accounts are getting shut down because you can't prove tax residency. And there are just so many of these things that people immediately don't think about, and like years
Mhm.
years pass by and then they realize, oh my god, I can't buy a property, I can't get a mortgage, or I can't whatever, open a trading account because they want me to prove where I pay taxes. And if you haven't declared anything anywhere, then how can you cross over that bridge? And so there's a lot of people who come with this like big pain, like how do I fix this after so many years of just being floating around and not being tied to anywhere. And I definitely say to someone who's planning on doing this now, get a tax residency somewhere. Like have that sorted, have somewhere legit to point to. Still do your travel. There are a lot of options still out there where you can have a tax residency legitimately, pay very limited taxes, but still have that safety net that you have somewhere to point to. That's not home, obviously, where you can have low taxes, you can have a legitimate setup, and you can still live the lifestyle. Because I understand that it is so easy and like nice to believe that you can't just be this person floating around or declaring anything to any government, but we are still living in a world where a lot of things are tied to taxes and tax residency, and banks more and more want to confirm tax residencies, and they ask for increasingly more and more proof. And so I definitely encourage everyone to just be on their safe side and set it up for the future more than anything.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an important point too. Because in the moment, yeah, we probably don't think about it,
Mm,
and then it doesn't
yeah.
come up until after when you're like, oh, wait, I needed this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then the worst part of it is when actually home or any other country starts making genuine inquiries, like asking you
Mhm.
questions, so prove to me this and that. In some countries, you can't even break tax residency unless you've got a tax residency somewhere else. So a lot of people assume, well, I've just left, so who's gonna come after me? I don't have to pay tax. I spend no time. But it's not as simple as that because the 183-day rule is not universal.
Mhm.
It doesn't apply everywhere. And sure, it applies to most places, but a lot of countries have a nuance to that to make it much, much harder to break tax residency. And so, but yeah, strongly encourage people to actually understand the tax law from wherever they come from and see whether it's even legal or if it's even possible to break tax residency just by virtue of not spending time there. Because you don't want to
Mhm.
deal with tax inquiries. I've done that a lot actually as part of my corporate job back in London, and it's a painful thing to go through. I mean, both with whoever helps you from a tax perspective, but also just for you personally, it's not a fun thing to have to deal with. And especially when
Yeah.
you can't actually give legit answers to the questions. Because if they ask you where you've been, where you've paid taxes, well, the answer is pretty clear, but no one's gonna like it. And
Yeah, yeah. I guess that little extra time that you put in the beginning will pay off later on. And it's good that
yeah,
there is, I mean, it's good that there is a lot of, I guess, at least more options out there where you can pay less taxes and
for
still
sure.
have the tax residency. Because I mean, I come from Germany, so I know how painful high taxes can be. Now I'm in Portugal, which is also not much better. But so for you, over the course of the time, what were some of the most, I don't know, let's say rewarding cases where you could really help people set it up properly so that they could see their
Mm.
savings?
Yeah, that's an amazing question actually. I've had a lot of different cases over the years, and they're all different in their own ways. And some of the most rewarding ones that I've had have definitely been those where people have actually, of course, wanted to save taxes. We always do that. Like there's no almost no situation where we don't at least lower by 70% the tax. So that's the whole initial purpose. But then I also very much love working with clients who of course we still want to live the lifestyle but are also looking for a home base, somewhere where you can continue to go back to, drop all your stuff, and have as a home to
Mhm.
literally go back and forth from. And I've had people who have moved to Bulgaria, actually quite a few people who have moved to Bulgaria, and they found tremendous reward in terms of the tax savings that we've achieved, but also the lifestyle. People actually really enjoy the lifestyle in quite a few places in Bulgaria now because the community has grown a lot. And so they've been able to not only reduce the taxes, but also actually find a place that where they can feel comfortable, where they can literally live the life, the nomadic life, but still feel like they belong somewhere. Because I feel like after years of
Mhm.
traveling, that becomes one of the main things that I see when it comes to this softer aspect of my work, as in this idea of traveling, of course, saving on taxes at all costs, but also making sure that you have somewhere that you feel like you belong, that you have community around where you can comfortably go back to recharge, do focused work, and still feel like you've got that. the place that nourishes you while still, of course, enjoying travel and having that flexibility to, do your own thing and change location. Because as nice as it is to constantly change locations, for me, even personally, I love knowing that I have my home base where I could buy my coffee machine and I could, have my winter clothes there if I spend winter, and still travel here, for example, now in Thailand with just a carry-on. Like just that
Mhm.
I that freedom in my mind and in my and in life to just be so much more flexible and not carry your whole life with you is a big one. Now of course I've got a lot of cases where people have saved tremendous amounts of money, and so that's pure taxes. So I've got people who have come from paying 300,000 a year to paying almost
Wow.
nothing, just by changing tax residency. So of course,
Oh, wow.
there is a spectrum, right? Some people are making,
Mhm.
certain levels. Others are enjoying, savings of 40, 50,000 euros, whatever the numbers are. It's always so transformative because there's always a purpose behind the money that we save. And so a lot of my clients are looking to either retire earlier, but people who have goals to have passive income only, coming every single month that they can live off by the time they get to 40. I've got people who want to retire their parents early. Some clients have now bought their dream house in Bali. Others are saving up to buy a place in Portugal, actually. And so there's just so many personal reasons that connect me so much better to the result that we're actually getting. Because it's never just about, the money and how much we're saving.
Mhm.
There's always a picture as to why we actually want to achieve those savings. And so, yeah, there's a lot of pure wealth creation, tax savings, results that I help my clients achieve. But there's also the softer ones, like having a home, having somewhere to
Mhm.
lay down a little bit of roots, not too many roots. We don't want too many roots, but a little bit of roots here and there, just to feel at home and just mentally to feel at peace. I guess you can relate to that
Yeah,
as
yeah, I think that's a very important point because I realized that when I changed my tax residency now, it
well.
is technically like just on a piece of paper, but it felt really
Mhm.
weird to me to like give up my German address that I've had all my life,
Yeah.
basically. So I feel like, and I also have friends who are like totally location independent and have no
Yeah.
registered address. And for me personally, I think eventually that would lead to a bit of an identity crisis. So I think it's very
Yeah.
important to not just look at the money. Maybe for some people that works, but I think for
Mhm.
a lot of people, it's also very important to know, like,
Mm.
where do I belong, especially in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
long run. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
absolutely relate. So, but I mean, it's actually amazing with your business. You can tackle a topic that nobody really likes to deal with, and you bring all this positive impact to people in small scale or large scale, whichever it is. It
Mhm.
helps. So, what services specifically do you provide now? I looked a little bit on your website, and I saw you
Mm.
have consulting, but also some general courses, right?
Yeah, so I don't specifically do consultation
Mhm,
calls. I do get inquiries about that actually quite a lot, but the majority of what I do is actually one-on-one
mhm,
help. So I help my clients. They all come from high tax countries, and they all want to obviously reduce the taxes as a kind of first step. But I essentially help them map out the different options that they have when it comes to reducing their taxes, but also matching that to their lifestyle. So here, geographies matter in a great deal because obviously some people are more, feeling closer towards Asia. Some people love Europe and want to stay within the Europe system. Some people are
mhm,
more even more global than this, and they consider South America. So there's there are a lot of options out there for people like us who are so location free. There are a lot of options on a global scale. And so for me, the first step is actually map out what makes sense for the particular client. So are we looking into options in Europe? Are we looking into options in Asia? And what options actually make sense with regards to the income that my clients make? Because depending on what type of
mhm.
income you generate, you essentially attract different types of taxes. And so some countries will be better or worse. And so the starting point is always what are the options? Like, what are the basic options that we can look at when it comes to tax residency? Once we've kind of mapped out all the options, we analyze every single one of them in terms of pros and cons, in terms of immigration, in terms of taxes, lifestyle as well. I'm very big on lifestyle, so for me,
Mhm.
it's just so important to make sure that that is completely aligned. Because as nice as it is to go and live tax free, for example, Dubai may not be a good option for everybody. Some people just do not like the country and the state at all, and there's a lot of other tax free options out there that are completely tax free, but people are just not willing to either spend the time or be in the heat or whatever. And so for me, it's
Mhm.
a very important point to make sure that we get the lifestyle right, because there's almost always going to be some element of physical presence required. Maybe not for 6 months, but it's just so important to get that right and make sure
Mhm.
that at the end of the day, we're not just saving massive on taxes, but we're also upgrading the lifestyle. And so once we map out all these options, and talk my client through all of them, I also give them recommendations. So of course, there's a lot of out there when it comes to how many options we have, but it's just so important for me to now to narrow them down and actually help my clients decide, okay, out of all these options, there are so many, what actually makes the truly best sense for them
Mhm.
in the particular setting that they have. And so we narrow the options down, and then together we decide, out of everything that we've talked about and that truly makes best sense, what is the one that calls their heart, both in terms of taxes, immigration, because immigration, depending on where we're talking about, it can be easier or harder, and also what it would mean for life going forward. And so once we decide, okay, let's go with tax residency, I don't know, in Georgia or Malaysia, whatever, I actually help them put it all in place. So that's to do with immigration, um, tax residency, tax ID, so all the kind of setup that's required to truly get them set up in the country. Sometimes we
Mhm.
set up businesses, sometimes we don't have to, depending on the situation. And so for me, that service really captures everything to do with that transition from a place where you've paid so much taxes, to a place where we achieve low taxes, but not for the sake of the lifestyle, but exactly the opposite. Like in a way that we foster the lifestyle, we help people really um, get so much closer to their ultimate goals. And really, actually, for me, it's
Mhm.
very important to really dive really deep into why are we doing this. I can't take a lot of people every single month because it just takes so much time. And so I love this service, and that's why it's just so full on. Because a lot of people don't want to do this. They don't want to spend the time researching. They get overwhelmed doing it. There's so much false information out there, and people selling you services that you probably don't even need, and they're not, fit for what you're looking for. But I love it. I love the
Mhm.
service. I love actually doing the work, the analysis. I love guiding people through it and really empowering them to make the right decision, knowing the pros and the cons, and the risk, because there's in some cases there is more risk than others, but knowing it just empowers people to make that decision that feels right for them, and of course getting it all properly done. And so that's kind of the bread and butter of what I do. It's like my baby.
Yeah.
But I do also have a few people who have come to me, actually quite a few people who have come to me with just with that burning question of, okay, I want to go and do this lifestyle, like this life independent lifestyle. I want to go get away from the 9 to 5. Where do I set up my business? And so that question has been coming back to me so many times. And to answer it the most efficient way as I possibly can, I actually have a course now on it. A very very short and to the
Mhm.
point course. Takes about 2 hours to get through it. Like very short snippets of information that helps people decide. People who are us, right? So people who are location dependent, want to have an online business, just get through that question where to get it all set up. And so the course is there for people to really
Mhm.
help them make that first call, and decide what makes best sense for them, in their personal setting. So those are kind of the main ways that at the moment I help my people with.
I love that you have like that you consider the personal aspects as well on your business. That's really nice. I think that's very unique because it's not the first thing that you think about when it comes to taxes. So for you personally, you're now in Bali at the moment, right?
Thailand,
Thailand. Ah, I thought it was Bali. Thailand. Very
close.
nice. And you go back and forth between Asia and Europe, right? Is that the plan to continue?
So I've been going pretty much between Europe and Asia. The plan, however, is to spend a little bit more time towards South America. I've only been
Mhm.
there a couple of times, and I haven't actually been since COVID. So I'm gonna go whenever I go back to Europe or spend some time in Europe. I love Europe, especially in the
Mhm.
summer. It's amazing. But
Mhm.
in towards the end of the year, I'm gonna go towards Mexico. I do want to explore a bit more of that part of the world, but also I know the community there is pretty strong as well,
Yes.
and I just want to explore it. So I I do keep my options quite open. Europe is kind of still my base. I actually don't think that
Mhm.
I'll ever get out completely out of Europe. But for sure, I do plan to continue spending a few months a year in Asia and a few months a year in South America. Because yeah, there's just so many beautiful places
Amazing.
in the world, and community is growing so fast that you just want to see how places are developing and who you're gonna meet there. Because there's just so many. The community is growing fast from what I
Mhm.
see, and it's just so nice to go and connect with people. Sometimes with the same people, just in different locations. And yeah, so the next one on my list is Mexico. I've never been, so I'm really excited.
Great. Yeah, Mexico was actually my first nomad destination, or the
Oh,
place that really made me fall in love with the whole community. So that was already 4 years ago. But
oh
there is a
wow,
really
okay.
strong community in Mexico. I think from what I've seen from people that are still there, it also continues to grow. So I think
Yeah,
you'll love it.
nice.
It's a
Yeah, I'm
great place.
excited. So
Yes.
excited.
Good. Well, then, thank you very much for all your insights and your story. All the best for your
Thank
future
you.
travels. I will link your information in the description below. So if anybody has more detailed questions, they can reach out to you on this topic. And
Awesome.
yeah,
Thank you.
I'll follow along with your travels to see how it goes.
Thank you so much, Ellie. I really appreciate the invitation and the time on this call. And yeah, thank you so much for giving me the space to share. And yeah, all the best with your travels as well. And enjoy
Thank you.
Madeira. I'm jealous because it's been on my list for a very long time, and I hear people absolutely loving it. But I'm afraid that if I go, I would want to stay, and I don't want to pay the Portuguese taxes.
Yeah, that is the one downside. Oh, thank you so much for listening to the podcast today. I hope you took something useful out of this conversation. Of course, this does not replace any specific advice. So, if you are setting up your business, of course, I suggest you get a tax expert and accountant for yourself as well for your individual case, because as we heard, cases can vary greatly. But again, thank you so much for listening. I will link all of Marchela's information in the description below. And there you, of course, also find Poncha Talks social media information. So if you like the podcast, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and follow on social media. And I will see you again next week. Bye. Thank you.